Hello, welcome to Leadership Trends and Insights. I'm your host, Nina Segura. I'm super excited to get you ready to spring into action. Get ready to hear from an amazing change leader and thought leader to supercharge your leadership and your team. Today, I'm joined by Allison Tabor. She is a national speaker. Let me just say what I have to say about her. She is badass. She is heart-based. She's fun. And then I'll tell you more of her beautiful attributes, as well. But like, just from my heart, I was really grateful to meet her by one of our mutual colleagues. So welcome, Allison. But I want to tell everybody just a little more about you. Allison is not only a national speaker, she wrote a best-selling book called Work Your Assets Off, Stop Working So Hard in Business and Life. She loves to lead, except on the ballroom dance floor. Allison believes that the best leaders understand, communicate, motivate, and leverage strengths, even when teams are 100% virtual or in a hybrid environment. So in this way, we're ready. We're ready for you to be inspired so that you can engage and retain your ideal talent. So welcome, Allison. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Hi, Nina. What a great opportunity to just spend some time with you and everyone that's out there. I'm excited.
I'm excited for you. I'm excited for everyone to get to know you and your leadership. So Allison, let's just start with the question I love to ask everyone. I love to ask, based on your experience, what do you think the world needs more now than ever as it relates to leadership?
Oh, there's so many different aspects, but I'd say the overarching theme, I think, is the aware leaders that are aware, starting with themselves. So being self-aware, so they're not just like, heads down, focus on banging things out. We're so busy doing things and we hear a lot about mindfulness. I think mindfulness is, in some ways, it's overused, and people are starting to get out of the word mindfulness. So I don't mean mindfulness. I mean aware of oneself, aware of, who is on your team, aware of what's going on, just really tuning in. And it's not something that you do just by pausing and meditating. It's just, paying close attention, being present and asking good questions and watching what's happening. So being informed starts with your own self-awareness.
Yeah, I love that. So when you say being like, so starting with looking inward, and then also when you say who's on your team, like really getting to know them, not just like, this is their name, this is their role, like who are they? What motivates them? What turns them on? What turns them off? The whole thing, right?
How they prefer to be communicated with, what their interests are, what motivates them, what their skills are, what do they suck at, and are you expecting them to succeed at what they have no interest in or suck at, which is a setup for failure for them and for you. All of those things.
I love that. A lot of times we'll work with leaders, and they'll hire someone who at the time they met them, they saw them in a certain light. And as their company progressed, maybe that person didn't progress with them. So I love that you're like, hey, be aware. Who is this person showing up now? It may not be the same person that you saw before, and maybe actually someone better. Maybe it's someone who you don't think would grow with your team. Oh, we have a comment. How nice. Thanks, Carolyn. I'm sure Allison appreciates it.
Nice.
Yay. All right. So tell me a little bit about, what do you think are some old paradigms that get in the way of what you just asserted that the world needs more now than ever? What gets in the way?
Oh, I think one of the things is this sort of being very reactive. I think we're pulled, just like actually with our emails. If you think about it, there's some of us who are more aware of not being a slave to emails, and we just react to an incoming email versus being very intentional and prioritizing things. So I think the same thing applies in leadership. Are you being reactive, where you're getting pulled into perhaps more of the operational, aspects of being a leader, as opposed to really being strategic and thoughtful and constantly evaluating, the landscape, what's going on, who is in that, environment, what do I need to know, what do I need to do, what does my team need to know, what should I be communicating, how do I want to connect and communicate with my environment, whether it's your colleagues, clients, and everyone. So I think the old paradigm is sort of like, I want to say like hunker down and head down. It's just everybody's been busy. Hi, how are you? Oh, I'm so busy. Like a badge of honor. Stop, I would say, celebrating how busy you are, and instead be more more present and more focused and more intentional and more aligned with the people around you, and you'll be a more significantly more effective leader.
I love it. When you think about that for yourself, I often, think what we teach is what we need to learn. Where have you stretched yourself as it relates to your own leadership?
Oh, stretching. If I am not feeling stretched, I break what isn't broken just to continuously stretch my leadership. I would consider myself a leader's leader in the sense that I have the incredible fortune of leading other leaders. So, for example, I am a facilitator for the Women Presidents Organization, and I have all these amazing CEOs. I have 3 different groups. So collectively, I've got over 45 CEO women, all over the country. And for me, by my leading them, I am learning as well, right? So there's so much. I feel like we always should be learning and teaching. And so leadership is not about you reach this level of knowingness or capability and suddenly you've arrived. No, it's never like that. I think we're all, works in progress as a leader, and on wherever you are on this trajectory of being a leader. I'm a much better leader today than I was many years ago. I was a pretty darn good leader, and a pretty uninformed leader at the same time in my former career. I used to own a structural engineering business I had for 20 years, and I did a lot of really cool things that were, I would say, ahead of the time in some ways, and I was a little pioneering in some of the things I did. And there were also some missteps, and I don't judge myself for that. I don't beat myself up. So I use it to inform myself, and I often think if I were to press like a replay button, what might I do differently? What would I bring forward and continue to do? So I think it's continuously evaluating ourselves, putting ourselves in situations to learn and grow. And if you make what you call, a misstep or a mistake, you use it to inform how you want to show up, or what you want to do differently, as opposed to just I see a lot of self-deprecation in the world of leaders. A lot, especially with women. Women tend to be really hard on themselves, and men can too. It's not limited to just women, but I do find women really personal if they're like, oh, I could have done that better, or I wish I handled that differently. As we all have those moments, and let it just inform your leadership growth and not define who you are as a person or a leader.
Right. Oh, that's so good. I just want to read some of the comments so you're aware of the impact that you're having on others. So for the first thing right away is Carolyn, obviously she said you're a badass. And Lisa Prasanchez, self-awareness is oneself is huge. And you even referred to it in your previous answers, like as sort of the foundation of the rest of what you had said. Keep the comments coming. We have more time, so please keep your questions and comments coming. Amy says, being intentional. I need to be more conscious of that. So true. Look at the vulnerability and the leadership in Amy's comment there. Perfect. And what a self-aware comment to say, right? Angela Sarver says, so true. We shouldn't confuse activity with progress. Oh my gosh. Yes. So good. And then I'm not sure, Charlene said, I love that. I'd love to know what you love. Charlene, so put it back in the chat if you're still here. And then Amy said, that's because institutionally, we've taught women to be hard on ourselves. Yes, Allison and I could talk about just that one comment for how long, Allison. We've had many, many, many conversations about that, Amy, spot on, about enculturation. And that's why meeting groups and coming to events like this are so important. So that you can remember who you are, right? Remember, that the gifts and talents you have exactly the way you are is what the world, I believe, needs more now than ever, right? So very good. Carolyn said, it's a challenge to be tuned into staff in a remote and hybrid environment. Any tips for us? Yes, that was one of my next questions. Carolyn, are you psychic? Come back. All right, your turn, Allison. What do you think?
If you're asking about the last comment about what to do with the virtual environment,
yes.
So like everyone else during the pandemic, I too had to pivot as a leader. I had all of these CEOs that were used to meeting in person that I had to figure out how to help support them and cultivate this connection where we were no longer in person, which was was something we were used to. I have these CEO groups, we were meeting monthly. So that was one thing that I had to address. Then also I had all the clients that, for example, that I was, whether it was helping them with one-on-one or with these group, DISC workshops, how do we now take the DISC and bring it into the virtual realm? So along the way, I learned some things in the hybrid and in the remote world that applies to other companies that can be continuously used, even though we're back to in-person and we're back into some hybrids. I would say personally, I don't think we're ever going to go back to 100% in person. My view is that we are going to be in a hybrid experience, in perpetuity. I think that is the future. And I think some companies will choose to be in person, and that might work for them. I think it works very well, especially when you have different levels of knowledge. And like, for example, in the design world, if let's say you're an architectural firm or interior design firm, or anything in the design realm where you might have an intern and a very senior person, it's really nice to be able to look at a set of drawings and talk about things and point to things here. All those things are helpful. And the reality is we also don't have that always as an option. So there are all sorts of interactive tools online as far as working, but I want to make a distinction between how do you work online and how do you connect online. They are not necessarily the same. So often what happens is people come into let's say, as they're on a Zoom, their video is perhaps off. They're multitasking. They're doing, they're checking their emails while they're there. So I'd say the first thing to have a really successful hybrid experience is set the expectation and live into that expectation. So as a leader, if you're a leader, say, hey, everyone, I'm really excited that we're getting together. I'm going to ask that you please keep your video on. We want to see you. We want to be able to interact with you. We want, this is not just, to think of it as a meeting. You wouldn't come to a live meeting, where you're in, underneath a paper bag. We would see you. So I think it starts with setting the tone, setting the expectation, not in a judging way of like, we can't see you. Would you turn your video on?
Yeah, how you say it's really important. Yes.
So you could say it in a nice way, like, oh, like, okay, we mentioned Carolyn. Let's say, Carolyn, I really love to see you. Would you mind turning your video on? So much different than, Carolyn, your video is off.
Yes, yes.
So it's not about berating people. It's about encouraging them and then doing the same. So there's times when, like everyone else, I have multiple priorities that are competing for my attention. And I would like to do two things. And I have really learned to give my full attention, like I am to you right now, for example. I could easily be looking at my text or seeing who's this or seeing who's that. That's not, that cheats me as well as you and everyone else out of the opportunity to connect. So for hybrid, again, set the tone. So what are you doing to create that? Then are you creating an interactive experience? It's not about you as a leader coming in and talking at your people. As a matter of fact, I think leaders should talk last. When leaders talk first, it's almost like, if anyone who has kids, it's like a kid looks to a parent oftentimes for how they're supposed to react. So like if you put your hand on the stove and it burns and you go, the kid's like, like that. But if you're not reacting, then they're kind of taking their cues. And I'm not saying leadership teams are like a parent and a child. I'm using it as an example of behaviors are observed, whether they're behaviors in business, behaviors in our personal lives. So what behaviors are you exhibiting and how do you encourage positive and engaging behaviors? And besides setting that tone, besides speaking last, allowing people to freely communicate without judgment or interruption or anything but support. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with people. It just means that you acknowledge them. So for example, we're on a call. You say, oh, I think we might want to do, 1, 2, and 3. And I might think 4, 5, and 6 as a leader. I don't have to say, well, I don't think we're going to be able to do that. I think we should do 4, 5, 6. Leaders do that often. So I would say, thank you so much, Nina, for suggesting 1, 2, and 3. That's a really good suggestion. And it's not but, or it's an and after everybody else has spoken. And I appreciate the 1, 2, 3 and the ABC and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking 4, 5, and 6 because of ... Any thoughts about that? And I'm still being open to feedback. So it's all in how you're interacting. Those were a few examples. One more example is give people a chance to just connect as humans. So
Mm.
build in some time at the beginning and at the end of your meetings, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 50, 30 seconds to have some interaction, and not have it be about, just business. It could be business. It could just be about them. I like to do some fun activities. Like when I'm doing workshops virtually, I'll have people bring an artifact to the room, an artifact that represents whatever we're talking about. So if it's
Mm.
communication, working on communication styles, they might bring an artifact that represents their communication style. Or if it's about leadership, bring in an item that represents you at your best as a leader, things like this. So there's a lot of creative things that we could do before and after staff meetings, project meetings, that I'm not talking about just happy hours. Well, we go virtual happy hours or we work. There's a way to integrate human connection and human doings at the same time.
I love that so much. You have a lot of really good positive feedback in the chat, which I'll let you look at later for sure. But I love where you're pointing everyone, and including me. I've led. I started Metaspire in 2005, and we were remote right off the bat, leaving Amex after 17 years in global reengineering and worldwide technology. And here we are. We're running multi-billion-dollar companies and looking for hundreds of millions of dollars worth of savings, and like, cool, where's your office? And it was in my bedroom. And at that time it was like almost like, you're not a real business if everybody's working remotely. And now we wouldn't even think of that at all. And I love where you're pointing people. And what I meant by that story is that you're normalizing that you're just as real of a person. If I saw you tomorrow in person, I would hug you, because I feel like we know each other. We've seen each other multiple times, and I can care about you just as much. There's another person that's behind the camera. It's a real person. It's not like, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. And so I love that you're bringing like virtual coffee into the mix, and, really spending time and really being present with, what you're trying to accomplish, the outcomes of what you're trying to accomplish. And not necessarily getting caught up in details, really, or the how. So I love that.
You just said something in there, Nina, if I can.
Of course.
It reminds me, when you asked about the old paradigms of leadership, I myself included, I felt like one of the other paradigms that ties into what you just shared is everything was more compartmentalized, where we had our business personality and our business, like how we showed up for, with our employees or with our coworkers, or how we showed up with, our vendors, and how we showed up with our neighbors. We're all so different. I think that no longer exists. I think that the world is pulling us into showing up as our full and complete selves.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big shift. And it doesn't mean that there isn't a time and a place for everything, right? So I'm not saying that if let's say you're, somebody who likes to do, dance, well, you can dance your heart out when you're with your friends, but is it okay to dance on the conference table in a room? No. But I do think bringing your full self unapologetically, with, of course, conscious awareness of the setting and having good, cues.
Impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think
Yeah.
so much more of that. And there certainly is for me. I would say I am much more holistic in my leadership style than I was when I first started out, where I felt like I had to be a certain way in this situation versus another.
I love that, Allison, so much. Can you tell us how what you just said relates to the book that you wrote, your best-selling book, Work Your Assets Off, Stop Working So Hard in Your Business and in Your Life? What can you say a little more about that?
Oh, say more about the book itself, or how it ties into, can you tell me?
Yeah, how does it tie into, as we're asserting ourselves as leaders, right? Whether we have on paper direct reports or not, I think you're really asserting that we can create connection, which is a human need, and regardless, right? Regardless of that, and I would love for you to talk just a little more about how you've molded some of these concepts of being a thought leader, of being someone who can change the room and create more connection in your book.
Yes. So what I chose as sort of the framework, if you will, for my book was these, what I call lies and truths. So there's a lot of like misconceptions of how we're supposed to do things and how life's supposed to be and how leadership's supposed to be. And so I introduce one of these myths that are actually widely held beliefs. And one of them, for example, would be that we have to do everything and be great at everything. And so, especially now with like, back in, I don't want to age myself, but we didn't always have technology where you can get instant answers. So we had to figure things out by like researching, right? Now it's like Google this or Hey Siri this, right? So we often try to do, I think, as leaders, significantly more than is necessarily good for us or our teams and people around us. So that's one of the big myths that I dispel in my book. Work your assets off. The very title is to really point to, we don't have to work so hard. And it doesn't mean that good work ethic and applying yourself. I'm not saying like, oh, don't do anything and be lethargic. It means like, be thoughtful, aligned, strategic, and effective with where your time, your energy, and your resources are placed. And the how it ties into all everything that we're speaking of is when you are aware of and aligned to, and everyone on your team and people around you are also aware of and aligned with what energizes them, what motivates them, what they enjoy doing, it's powerful and you get farther faster and everybody feels so much more gratified and less burned out. I think the word I hear probably more than anything right now is burnout. Well, part of it, we're taking on way more than I think we should. And I don't mean in terms of like the amount of work or amount of tasks. It's like taking unaligned tasks on. Like, should I be like doing my oil change in my car, even if I know how? Well, no, there's someone who's better equipped and that's their strength and that's their joy. Well, do I want to do that? Can I do it is not the question. Should I do it? How does this serve me? How does this inspire me? How does it energize me? Is it energy adding? Is it energy neutral or is it energy sucking? Those are just as important, I think, when we're looking at what we do. So that's one of the things I talk about in the book. One other that's probably like super important is I'm a huge fan of understanding communication styles. I brought DISC into my engineering company many years ago. I'd had DISC with, I had used it with my team to better understand, each of my team members, how to motivate them, really actually how to just see them. And they felt, when they felt more seen and heard from me as a leader, they served in such a different way. So I learned really early on that the communication tool, or I happen to like DISC, but I think anything that you choose that helps you to become more aware of people and how they're hardwired and what they're interested in will better serve you. So another big chapter another big dispelling of a myth, if you will, is that people want to be communicated the way you want to be communicated with. That's the golden rule. We've heard that for years. And what people really want is not to be treated the way you want to be treated. They want to be treated the way they want to be treated. How do we do that if we don't know what that is? So there are tools to help us to uncover that and to give us framework and language for discussion and understanding.
Love it. When you and I talked about the modern leadership persona, I know you were gracious enough to let me to present to your group yesterday, and we talked about the statistics behind this double-blind study that the Harvard Business Review cited, 64,000 interviews, and 10 of the leadership. There was 10 leadership competencies that were boiled down, and 8 of the 10 were considered feminine in nature. And one of them is the gift of nurture, right? And that ability to be an ally. And you actually scored nurture on the modern leadership assessment that you took for us. If you would be willing to just share, like, how does that resonate with you? What do you see? How do you see that as something that you've utilized? I mean, you've talked about it a little bit already, but if you could just talk a little bit more, like, about how could that, being a nurturer in the work environment, regardless of gender, but like having that sense of nurture, that sense of connection, how do you think that can help you and those around us, further the goals that we're trying to reach? You think about every company wants productivity and profitability and employee retention and customer for a wow lifetime experience. So can you tell us a little bit, like what, and just with, you know, I know you resonated with it, but tell us, like, where, if the world had many more nurturers that are like, yes, I'm a nurturer, where do you think that would get us as a where would it get companies? Where would it get the world? Like, tell us about that.
So I might have an answer for you that may not be that popular. I don't think we need a world full of nurturers. I think we need a world full of a variety. So I don't want to be surrounded by mini me's around the world. That's not good for a leadership team. That's not good for our world. Yes, you want to have a basis of compassion and support. I'm not saying that we should go around and be people who are not mindful of nurturing and the things that come with it. Because I was actually, my primary was a nurturer and my secondary was cultivator. And I will say that might be the underlying motivation. Like for me, for example, I consider myself an advocate. That's the word I'm often resonating with and people apply to me. Is I advocate for business owners. I advocate for so many different people in different contexts, but I truly am, and it's all about advocacy. And I think nurturer kind of ties in with that, and cultivator. It doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, honey, how are you?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it means that I want to nurture the best, from people. I want to really be an advocating supporter. How I do it can vary, right? I always say, actually, I'm a mix. I'm a hammer and a hug is what I say. So I can be kind of tough at moments. And then here's like, oh, so it's like not about Pollyanna, a life is perfect. It's like, it's just learning how is it that I show up? So whatever my particular persona as a nurturer, I don't want to be around others that I want my compliments. So I would like your style and Carolyn's style and Susie's style and Sarah's style. This is what is needed in leadership, is not to just have people who are like you and agree with you. We have so much going on in the world that we talk about right now about acceptance of others in terms of, cultures and gender and race. I say that extends to our strengths. Your strengths are your strengths. Your persona is your persona. It isn't better than mine. It is just different than mine. Collectively, our personas and our strengths, when we're leveraging them after we've learned about them, that's where the power is. It's the 1 + 1 = 3 factor.
Yeah, and I love that you said that. And the nurture in the modern leadership assessment is the one that can nurture self first, right? Like you were talking earlier about, hey, we're busy, like we wear that like a badge of honor, right? Versus like, hey, going inward with, hey, I'll do better next time, right? And that's where it starts from, because otherwise I will be like, Carolyn, you didn't turn your camera on again, because I'm on depletion. I'm coming from a sense of depletion. And I love also what you said. And I do hear that, the challenger, the Enneagram 8 coming out, like we don't all need to be nurturers, right? And I think that that's such a beautiful part of the integration that, that you have. That's part of a beautiful part of your leadership. And, that kahuna, right? That's connected with the vision is that we're all enough, and that we're all okay. So I love that you brought that into. If you want to come hang out with Allison and I, we're co-creating an event. Work your asses off from her book, Don't Work So Hard in Your Business and in Your Life, because of course we can feel burnt out and overwhelmed. And so we're going to be talking more about how you can be more connected as a leader. What we mean by that is being more connected to yourself as a person, and most importantly, the people around you. And even when they don't agree with you, right? Even when it's uncomfortable and you're like, oh my gosh, get, like Brene Brown says, get ready to rumble, right? It had nothing to do with, race or gender expression or identity or color, but it could have just to do with what you said, Allison, about, differences in the disc or just differences of thought and being able to co-create and even the 1% truth that we come from, right? From wherever that is. So just read a couple more compliments and then we're going to close. To know who compliments you, you need to understand yourself, your own strengths and weaknesses. Yes. Jessica, welcome, Jessica. Yes, I love the balance. If I see things from one perspective, I want to collaborate from another perspective to get a few a full view of things. I love it so, so, so much. All right. So if you want to learn more about Allison, there it is in the chat. I'll put it up for you again. You can learn more about her at AllisonTabor.com. And she's got some really amazing, it's an amazing website. It's super fun and super cool to check out. So come and check it out. And if you want to hang out with some women that are smart and successful and love to mastermind and love to learn as much as they love to collaborate, come and join Allison and I May 2nd. We'll be together co-creating and supporting you as women. Thank you, Allison, for joining us. I'm so glad that you are here, and I'm so glad that we met. Everyone, reach out, keep the feedback and the comments coming. Allison and I will be checking the comments in each social media profile later on. So thank you, Allison, and everyone have a happy hump day.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.